phony one, cause I can't allow it. I'm overpowered like Bowser, and your mouth is writing checks with a negative balance. You can't cash that. I don't think it's covered by that Affleck. High side if you want.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Let's talk about Dark Side of the Ring, the many sides of Luna Vachon. And you know, this was actually very good. I really enjoyed this. To be quite honest, there was a lot of stuff in here that I actually didn't know. And of course I did some extra readings, but they covered a lot of ground, believe it or not. The Luna Vachon story isn't one that is very long and complicated. You know, they did a good job on this one. I will say they got people in this joint that I really want to hear talk, except one. But she was, you know, Luna's friend, so I guess we have to listen to Medusa. But let's talk about the cast. So the cast was Van Herd, who was the son of Luna Vachon, Mick Foley, Mad Maxine, she said what her real name is, but I don't remember it, Medusa, Gangrel, Paul Vachon, who they didn't utilize nearly enough, and Kim Sachs, who was also another female wrestler. So this was, again, very good documentary. I think they did a good job of talking about her struggles. It was also pretty tasteful, but it was also, I think, pretty honest for the most part. And of course, they got their digs in that, you know, that Luna didn't get the title because she wasn't pretty enough, and you know, all that kind of stuff. But we'll have a conversation about that. But I do generally agree that Luna Vachon is one of the most underrated, not just wrestlers, but personalities in the business. Unique voice, unique look, just tremendous. I grew up a fan of Luna. And I wasn't a fan of a lot of female wrestlers at the time. I was really only a fan of two, Luna and Sherry. That's all I cared about as a kid when it came to females, Luna and Sherry. And then I found out they were both friends, and then they both died of drug overdoses. You know, there's a price for being awesome sometimes. And, you know, that awesomeness has to come from somewhere. Just like, you know, Ultimate Warrior, I was a big fan of him, you know, heart attack. Randy Savage, I was a big fan of him too, heart attack. You know, there's a price for being awesome sometimes. And part of that price is, you know, an early death, you know, in some occasions. So let's get into this Dark Side of the Ring thing. All right. So Van Herd starts the documentary talking about how he believed wrestling was real as a kid because his mom showed up to school with a snake once. Gangrel told the story of, you know, the meeting. They first met in Florida where she was acting nuts and called him fresh meat and was messing around with him. Let's just tell that story since we're here. So Gangrel meets Luna in Florida. He must be a young guy at this point because Luna's been in the business for a little while. And they kind of didn't really like each other, which is kind of a classic story of, you know, the more you dislike somebody, the more you actually kind of do like them. They kind of Gangrel stayed away from her, which is very weird that the vampire guy's going to be like, man, she's crazy. Like, you walk around with fangs and she's crazy. But Tom Nash, who was the original tag team partner of Gangrel and the team Blackhearts, which I believe was in Stampede Wrestling. Luna was his friend. He kind of had a crush on her. But he is the one who reintroduced them. After they kind of separated and got away from each other in Florida, he's the one who kind of reintroduced them. And Luna attacked him. I'm guessing it was playful that she bit him. And she's messing around with him. And then they became friends after that. And then the story gets a little bit muddy as Tom marries Luna. But Dave, Gangrel rather, is having sex with Luna at the same time. So he's kind of banging his tag team partner's wife, which is confirmed by her son, which is, of course, it's just gossip at first, but it's confirmed by her son. So that's kind of a tricky situation and not good. A whole lot of not good. So Luna is the one who she's trying to get Gangrel a job in the WWF. Ended up giving herself a job. This is where she debuts at WrestleMania 9. And she, of course, gets to square off with Sherry. But there's no real women's division in the WWF, so she's a manager mostly. Eventually, Luna hooks up with Sherry. They're best buds. They're doing drugs. And things get real bad. Luna gets fired after a stint in rehab. The WWF is worried about her mental illness, and she needs to get it together. But they give her some time off. I think it was like a year or two, maybe 3, and she's brought back to be a part of the Attitude Era. And this is kind of where things get real dicey, because she was while she was gone, she was suicidal. She was a cutter, which her son says that she would often have like cuts on her arms and stuff like that, which could have been wrestling, but we don't know. We don't know for sure. But Luna comes back in like the late 90s, and she's put with Goldust, which we are told is a downgrade. Oh, she's a wrestler. She shouldn't have to be a manager. It's a downgrade. It's like, in a company that doesn't really utilize female wrestlers that much anyway, you should really get on TV as much as possible. Now, this is, of course, this run is fairly more famous because it involves all the stuff with Sable. And the Sable Luna beef goes on to probably when Luna actually died. You can find numerous articles, on Luna still didn't like Sable in like 2004 or whatever, 2007, and all that kind of stuff. But Luna puts on her working boots, goes out there, has to wrestle Sable, and not harm Sable at all, because Sable is a model. She doesn't want scratches, she doesn't want bruises, she doesn't want anything, and WWF doesn't want it either, because they want to sell pictures. They want to sell posters. You can't sell posters of somebody with a black eye. I mean, it's not the same as a guy, Stone Cold Steve Austin, you could put his bloody face on a t-shirt. Can't do the same thing with Luna. Or Sable, rather. Nobody wants to buy a bloody Sable t-shirt. Nobody cares about that. So Luna does her job. She goes out there, has a fairly memorable match with Sable. Probably the highest she would ever go as far as Luna is concerned. And she doesn't get an appropriate, or what she feels is an appropriate recognition for the amount of work she had to do to work with somebody who couldn't work. Which I agree. If you want to, there definitely should have been some pats on the back and maybe another stack of cash if you had to work with somebody who was such a diva as Sable was. I absolutely, and this is not something that is gossip. Sable has been, everybody who's ever met Sable has been pretty open with it. There's a Vince Russo quote about how all the women in WWF hated each other. Sable hated Sunny, Sunny hated Sable, Luna hated Sable, Chyna hated Sunny, Chyna hated Sable. So it was this whole thing where all of these chicks just didn't like each other. So it wasn't much of a women's division to begin with. But, it was a difficult thing there because all these women have to work together. They're going to have segments against each other, and they have real life heat. And so that threat, that sort of Damascus that Vince dangles over Luna's head, like if you mess with Sable, it's over with. Part of that is don't take liberties. That's part of it. Because you can. And then, of course, they tell this story about Luna attacking Sunny in the backstage area, just beating her up. And I'm like, wow, okay. we just talk about that like it's a normal thing to do. Just normal to beat up on Sunny, who was probably like 22 at the time, maybe 23. No, that's probably not the smartest thing in the world to be doing. But from there, we find out that Luna was asked to be in sexualized angles, and that she didn't think it fit her character, which is absolutely true, by the way. Luna Vachon is one of the few female characters that should never have been in this position, to be in an evening gown in the ring. It just makes no sense for the character. Like, why would she care about being sexy? Now, you could have done a storyline where Luna, normalizes and, I could have created a whole storyline around that thing, but there's no need for me to go into that now. But you could have done that if that's what you wanted to do. But she couldn't have been Luna Vachon as we know her and be in that scenario. She is a monster. You can't do that. She's not rational enough. And there's some brilliance in, the Luna character. But, when you try to take that away, she was too layered of a character for you to do that with. There's other people you can do that with, and that's always been the problem for me when it comes to the TNA and WWE, is that it became everybody's thing. It's like you can have that stuff on the side. You can have your Stacy Keeblers, you can have your Tori Wilsons and stuff like that. I have no problem with the girls who want to bend over and do lingerie pillow fights. But you also have to have other characters too. You have to populate that world with different kinds of characters. This is why China stood out so much, because she was bigger than everybody else. She was more muscular than everybody else. And she could still be put in that situation where her showing off muscle and sex appeal at the same time is unique. Where why would Luna, who looks like she barely bathes, why would she be in a situation where she's in an evening gown? Like, if you was to imagine sex with Luna Vachon, you wouldn't imagine an evening gown being involved. You would imagine it like being attacked by a bear. Like that kind of thing is what you would imagine having sex with Luna Vachon is like. And therefore, that's how sexuality of the character should come through. Everybody's going to have some type of sexual nature to them, but you're not going to have it be to come out the same way for everybody, because everybody's not the same. You know what I'm saying? Therefore, characters are going to approach the subject of sex and conflict and et cetera, differently. Since Luna's character was based very highly on her own mental state, she shouldn't even be in that position, because she should be too out of control, or the moment something, gets a little too weird, she should pop off and people wouldn't even want to be around her. Like if that scene would have ended with Luna attacking somebody, like, viciously attacking somebody, screaming and chasing people away, that would have been perfect. But that ain't really what happened. So it was a mistake. And that's Vince, and that's the Vince and Vince connection of just wanting to throw titties on TV, which is cool and all, but you gotta be able to populate that world with different kinds of characters. You need women who don't wrestle. You need women who do. You need female managers. You need female wrestlers. But they need to be built a certain way. Characters need to be presented a certain way. There's so many different ways for you to present people in this world. It makes no sense for you to limit them to one way. But I will say this. I do not see being a manager as a downgrade, which was the one thing I walked away with and was like, ugh. Like to say that being a manager is a downgrade. It's like, sure, but Luna wrestled. She didn't wrestle a lot though. They did a good job of, throughout her run, limiting the amount of time Luna had to get in the ring, but she was still involved. It was like Lita earlier. She wasn't really in the women's division, but she got involved. She was involved with every Hardy Boys match, doing a hurricanrana. She might have taken a bump. She might get knocked down when one of the boys get knocked down. That's how Luna was. Luna was out there. Sherry too. Sherry took bumps. Sherry got to jump off the top rope on guys. She got to do splashes. Maybe she didn't get to work a full match after the 80s, because she did work matches in the 80s with Rock and Robin and stuff like that. She was actually the women's champion for a while. So you didn't get that level of, work with Luna, but Luna was in the ring quite a bit, I guess, working with midgets. She also did a lot of stuff with, Doink, and she did a lot of other stuff in the later years with the Gold Dust character, she was involved with a lot of that physically. And, but I get it. I get it that Luna later in the documentary, they played some audio of her saying that she essentially gave up her family to chase winning the title, and she never got it. And I thought to myself, like, damn, that sucks. And it does, because they could have done it. And this leads us to Alundra Blaze, who tells this story also in a book, that she wanted to put Luna over. I believe it was in Canada. And Luna thought that they would get fired if they did that, which of course there was a way of doing it to make it seem like it was a complete and total accident. Like, oh, she got knocked out. It was an accident though. It was a roll up. The referee counted fast or something like that, which, there's ways around these sorts of things if that's really what you wanted to do. But Luna was just so worried about her job. She was like, no, let's not do it. And I always liked that story. But I also says that it's kind of that she didn't like Medusa had already been in the business for a long time at that point. She had been wrestling in the 80s. And here it is, 94, 95, and she wants to lose the title at a house show and then win it right back, which, probably wouldn't have damaged her too much. But at the same time, when the company is trying to build you up because they don't really have much of a division, for you to try to say, well, devalue me by having me get beat. And then people are going to be like, what? You don't understand what we're doing here. It's one thing if it was like a full-fledged division where we could maybe get away with something like that. But when it's not that many people, if everybody wins the title, if everybody becomes the champion, then it doesn't mean anything, So there has to be people who get it, and there has to be people who didn't get it. Granted, Luna should have been one of the people who got it. I will agree with that. But at the same time, there has to be people who don't get it, because you have to be able to have that conversation of, man, is she the best to not ever get that belt? I honestly don't know. I don't know. It's a good conversation to have. I don't think everybody has ever had that conversation. People talk about it all the time when it comes to the guys. Who is the best male wrestler to never be WWE champion? You got Rick Rude, you got Kurt Hennig, you got some other guys. But they never have that conversation when it comes to the women, though. Maybe because for most of the time, up to a certain point, just about every woman who came in the company was a champion at one point. And it's just now getting to the point where not everybody can get there. And you define success by the failures. You look at all the people who didn't make it, and it's supposed to make the people who did feel more elite. If everybody can't get a turn. And in 95 or whenever this would have been, it just wasn't her time. And then of course the Sable thing happens, but that was completely marketing, and they just want to sell t-shirts and, trading cards or whatever the hell else Sable's face was on. So I got into that a little bit more than I wanted to. I jumped way, way, way ahead. So we got to go back. Luna Vachon, the stepdaughter, the adopted daughter of Paul Vachon, of the Vachon wrestling family out of Montreal. They tell the story of how, her dad, Paul the Butcher Vachon, adopted her because he married her mom. He tells this story in the documentary of, I believe, her real father killed himself or something like that. And, she was raised in the family, and she idolized her Aunt Vivian. Now, I've never heard that maybe she was abused by Aunt Vivian. I've never heard that story until this very documentary. I'm a reader. I read articles. I have never read that before. But I did read a lot about Moolah, and I think we all did. So, Paul Vachon was partly the trainer of Luna, and then he sent her to Moolah. So Moolah is, of course, very well known for kind of exploiting the girls, and they tell this story in the documentary of Luna seeing the girls being taken advantage of Moolah is abusive. She's actually, maybe selling some of the girls out. They're taking suggestive pictures, which was actually, something that I find to be very weird, because she was only 16 at the time. So that's disgusting. It was pretty disgusting. And that kind of thing, this is Maxine talking, telling this story. So I believe it because, she was there, she was another one of the Moolah's charges. But to me, it seemed like, we got this whole, we're going to hit the notes. We're going to hit WWE for being sexist. We're going to hit Moolah because, of course, that's, one of the things. These are like regular punching bags for Dark Side of the Ring. So, the fun stuff for me was seeing Luna in Championship Wrestling from Florida. When she was introduced as regular, mild-mannered reporter, who then gets attacked and brainwashed by Kevin Sullivan. That's a hell of an origin story, because Kevin Sullivan is doing all this demonic shit, right? He's doing devil worshiping stuff. He's pulling guys from rivers. It's real insane cartoon stuff. And he created Luna Vachon. And then once Luna was created, she took it and was able to take it to such an extent. Man, I'm telling you, I love Luna. I really do. She was tremendous. Look at that. And the crazy thing is, later she talks in the documentary, played the audio of her voice. She talked about how doing the Luna voice basically changed her voice permanently. Like she didn't really have that voice before. That voice came from her constantly being Luna all the time. And that's dedication to gimmick, dedication to the character. And the interesting thing about the Mad Maxines and the Bull Nakanos and the Luna Vachons is when you make yourself ugly like that, when you shave the side of your head and paint veins in it, and you got big red lipstick, and you're going full Mad Max with the buckles and everything, the chains and everything, it's hard to go back. It's hard for people to see you as a normal person after that. So that's a big change. When you shave side of your head, and especially in the 80s and 90s, it's normal today for people to shave side of their head. Back then, no, it wasn't normal, But I loved it. I love Luna. Like this is awesome. So Luna is starting her cocaine problem in the 80s. Maxine says, "Oh, it snowed every day in Florida." I bet it did. I bet it did. I didn't know. I had heard she dated Dick Slater. I didn't know she married Dick Slater. Nor have I ever heard that Dick Slater beat her up. That's also a new one for me. So, who knows whether that's true or not. The WWF video game, I do know that this is true, but it's a tidbit because I grew up with this game. It's a tidbit that I didn't remember. That Luna Vachon was the first female wrestler that was playable in a WWF video game, and you can actually beat up men with Luna Vachon. And I remember playing that game. I just did not remember her being playable in it. But that rules. Like that's dope. I don't know if she made any other games. I will have to put some thought into it, maybe even do some research. Because I didn't think to even look at that, to see if she was in any video games. Because I just figured she wasn't. Like, who would she fight? It wasn't that many women at the time. But, in that game, you can actually play as Luna. That's pretty cool. So, we talked about Luna and Bam Bam. There wasn't no women's division in 1995. So, there was a lot of stuff that they went over here. And they kind of skipped a lot of Luna's post-wrestling life of when she started doing, outside of doing drugs and spazzing out, which seems like, oh, that's all she did after she left the wrestling business, is, she fell on hard times, It says she was a waitress at Shoney's. Well, it was a restaurant. The restaurant was Shoney's from the article that I read that she was working as in the restaurant. It was Shoney's. She started driving a truck. She became a truck driver. WWE actually did an interview with her around the time, shortly before she died, maybe a year or two before she died. I think they were probably considering a Hall of Fame thing around that time, but it didn't happen. But it was kind of like a "Where Are They Now" type of interview, where they had Luna and her truck and everything, and she just didn't want really much to do with wrestling, and she was kind of on the outs, just enjoying life. And apparently she hadn't gotten clean for a little while around this time, and just not enough, and she ended up passing away in 2010. So we got the relationship with Gangrel. It fell apart due to drugs, and he was doing drugs with her, and he was like, "Look, I can't hang. She banging this stuff a little too hard. I can't hang. I'm going to die if I don't, the end portion, though, the end part here where they talk about her being dead. And her son is like, he doesn't care how she died. It just sucks that she is dead. Well, she did die of a drug overdose. That has been official for a while now. I believe it was painkillers that got her. But Paul Vachon, and I'm going to end with this. I'm not going to go into Medusa and her. What was this garbage? We got to do better as a business because there's so much talent that died. It's like, yeah, and there were a lot of them are drug addicts. That's just kind of how it is. Drug addicts, they overdose on you. I'd be more worried about the heart attacks, but I'll be more concerned about that than the people who are doing drugs and overdosing. That's just people doing drugs. And I mean, sure, wrestling sucks and you get addicted to painkillers and stuff like that. I get it. But, not too concerned about the guys doing drugs and ODing as I am about dudes stroking out at 51 or whatever. That's not good. That ain't good. But Paul Vachon said something that I want to end on. And maybe I'll end on Gangrel's sentiment. But he said that to truly love somebody is to understand them when they were alive. And I think that's a tremendous quote. And it's actually sat back and made me reflect on maybe some of the people that I don't really understand, And I know quite a few people who struggle with mental illness. And I work with people who struggle with mental illness. And I can tell you, they need understanding a lot, because they test you, It is the ultimate test of friendship to be able to deal with somebody who has mood swings, somebody who blows up on you. And then, 20 minutes later calls like either A, nothing ever happened, or B, they're just expecting, that you will accept an apology based off of, hey, you know how I am. I didn't mean it. That's very difficult. And it's even more difficult in the workplace when you have other combustible elements, And I think that maybe was a big issue in why Luna not only didn't come back after she got fired again, but why she was, never really welcomed back. It was kind of like, what kind of mental state would she be in? And that's the one thing that has been proven pretty consistent when it comes to the WWE. If you show hints of mental illness, like serious mental illness, they don't bring you back. They do not. If you have serious mental illness, they find some way to get you out of the door, and then they cut out the lights as soon as you leave. You very rarely get a second chance. Substance abuse, you'll get a second chance. Just straight up criminal, a dumbass, they'll give you a second chance. But that serious mental illness, man, I don't know. Is there anybody within the last 10 or 15 years that has said that, I got bipolar disorder or whatever, and WWE has pushed them as being a top star, or, hell, that's the real glass stealing, if you want to be honest. It ain't about being black or being Hispanic or anything like that. It's about being fucking mentally ill in the wrestling business. Because as soon as somebody finds out, that becomes your gimmick. Just like being gay becomes your gimmick. Just like sometimes being black becomes your gimmick, or being Samoan becomes your gimmick. Somebody find out you got mental problems, that becomes your gimmick. You're just going to be the guy who, talks to himself, man, and you just blow up about everything, man. It's like, nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to act out what they really go through. Not that. Not to that extent. But she did it. Luna really was out there acting out. And it's probably a good release for her, too. Because she does get to be wild and crazy in front of people. And it's not embarrassing because everybody knows it's a character and nobody knows who she really is. But I did like this documentary. I thought it was very good. So because I always do extra readings, we're going to do some extra readings here. And this ought to be fun. This is an excerpt from the book Sisterhood of the Squared Circle, The History of Women's Wrestling. It's by Pat LaPrade and Dan Murphy. So this is a very interesting piece here. Luna Vachon was a wrestler, a performer, and a person like few others. She influenced the careers of many female wrestlers, including the likes of Natalya, Lita, and Daphne, and was known to be a first-class ass kicker. But despite that reputation, or perhaps because of that reputation, she never achieved what she considered to be the ultimate prize, the WWF Women's title. I was scheduled to win that title 3 times. Once, I was caught smoking a cigarette in front of the fans. And the other 2 occasions, Sable forgot the belt in her hotel room. She did it on purpose. I'm positive about that. So, that was great, because she's almost certain that, that Sable is out to get her. Sable was messing around. And a lot of the Dark Side of the Ring information comes out of this book. So, they tell the story about, her and Moolah. She says, wait a minute, where was this clip from? Oh, shit. Let's see. Vivian and her husband, Buddy Wolf, started coaching me on a mattress in Minnesota. I was only 16 years old. She said, then my father sent me to Moolah in Columbia, South Carolina. I was told that I was too skinny to be a heel, but I wanted my aunt to be proud of me, so I persevered. It's funny because today all the divas are very skinny. So that's very good, man. I really love Luna and her insight to things. And so then here she is talking about Sable. He says, I wanted to help her at the beginning, but she told me she didn't need to learn how to fall, as she was going to become a champion anyways. She started to believe that she could wrestle anybody. She had not paid her dues. She had not been trained. I grew up protecting the wrestling industry. I was used to the old school mentality, not the entertainment one. That's, there it is, man. That was clear as crystal. Now, Luna did retire in 2007. She didn't go straight from getting fired to WWE to doing drugs and dying. But here's the reason why she retired. She says, I have so many problems with my neck and back that surgery would be useless. So, that's why she was taking painkillers. And, that makes sense. She was taking painkillers and ended up dying. So in that same book, because it's a essay on the various different women's wrestlers, there's also an essay on Sable. So it says, nevertheless, at WrestleMania 14, the team of Sable and Mero defeated Goldust and Luna Vachon in a mixed tag match that saw Sable unveil her quote-unquote Sable Bomb, Powerbomb, a version of Mero's TKO finishing move with a pin on Vachon. But Sable's lack of wrestling skills didn't make her a backstage favorite, especially with some of the veterans. In an interview with WWE.com, Luna expressed her thoughts about Sable that night. Luna wasn't a wrestler until I made her one. A real wrestler can wrestle a mop and make it look like the mop is kicking their ass. And that's what happened that night. She beat me, and when we got to the back, there was champagne and confetti, and everyone wanted to celebrate with Sable. I kept walking until Owen Hart came up to me and told me that I had just put on the match of my life. It meant a lot more to have someone like him say that to me. So, we're not going to go into a whole lot of extra here, but I thought that was really colorful stuff that I decided to bring out. And it would have been nice if they'd have kind of like read it, exactly. But you can tell, this was the source for a lot of their episode, because a lot of this stuff, outside of the Dick Slater abuse and the aunt abuse, some of that other stuff, some tidbits they added because they did research. But mostly, I think they just read this passages in this book and decided to just go with it, which is perfectly fine, because again, the Luna story isn't one that is long and complicated. She had a good run. She should be very well known. The fact that she's not as well known is a crime, if we're being honest. I know that she was a character and a gimmick, but come on. She could have been the female Ultimate Warrior. I'm talking like somebody you could have put on cups, somebody you could have put on video game covers, and people would have stopped and said to themselves, what the hell is that? Like, you talk about the airport test. If do you stand out in an airport? Like, Luna would stand out, And maybe I'm just being a mark. I'm really a huge fan of Luna and Sherry. And they was around the same age when they died. And they died like 3 years apart. So, I just sat back and enjoyed this thing, man. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, donate to the channel. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll talk to you guys.
Skin tone, so why attach yourself and piggyback the wealth you didn't earn or lack yourself? I'm telling you to own up to your own success and failures. It's a reason why